Hello people, and welcome back to part 44 of Ilos, a modded Cities Skylines build. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thanks so much all support on the stream where we built this little Hollywood sign inspired viewing area for the Ilos site up on the hill, alongside a couple little odd jobs like creating a little cargo yard. Down here where we do have a new alien coven, of course. Got these guys over here, right, hiding out in the containers away from the surge party that's coming for him. Thank you so much for all support across the Ilos live streams. Glad you guys are indeed still enjoying them. However, in today's episode, we are going to be heading right back over to this side of Ilos to work on a very unique project. The airplane sort of boneyard, if you like. Very distinct style of builds, and indeed a build that we're taking from a part of Arizona. So let's head over to Tucson and see what we're working with today. So welcome to the David Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson. We've been here before. It's a very similar sort of mile grid configuration that we see in Phoenix, of course, but this is a military Air Force base. So we're not going for a full military build today. We're really just kind of taking the boneyard sort of function from the Air Force base, because to replicate something of this scale, I don't have the node count for it, so we can't do something like that. But what we very much are interested in taking inspiration from today is how this airplane graveyard just kind of sits within a city. So super symmetrical and parallel sort of layouts of the actual planes, right? Very neat, very sort of geometric with each other. There is then a mass amount of prop line tool work using some props where we can imagine that all of these stripped components out of the dead aircraft are stored here, ready to be processed at a further date. Okay, and there's lots of different types of planes as well. So where this is quite military, we're going to be going quite generic today. But we do have some sort of fighter jets that we can perhaps place in. But you can just get an impression of it, right? What a strange place this is. And we will have a little look at the street view here, just for sort of a little bit of perspective, if you like, as to how this sits. So we have a sort of suburb here. There's houses. And then across the street, there is a mass amount of dead airplanes that are just ready to be stripped, or perhaps, I'm not sure, maybe these do go back into service. I don't think they do, but maybe there's any sort of aviation fans in the chat that can let us know. But things we are interested in is the orientation and layout of the planes. There's some kind of central processing facility here. Indeed, where we do have some more plane assets, some more hangars over here as well. Looks like there's some helicopters there. They look like Apaches to me, I think they do. Right, but sort of crisscrossing road configuration, and then there's car parks and large warehouses and just general kind of industrial service vibes to be had over here. There's also some silo looking things as well. I'm guessing perhaps this is some sort of fuel storage, but you get the general idea. Okay, so nice inspiration to take from Tucson today to help build the Ilos Boneyard. So let's see what we can do with a very unique build in Cities Skylines, shall we? Wonderful. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So we're going to start bringing out some of these country lanes here. Again, glancing back at Google Earth, we can see that they're just sort of single lanes. There's nothing sort of major to them. If anything, we actually maybe want our American road to come through here. Maybe the one with the yellow dash. And then we have a security point asset, of course, that we've used before. This is going to be perfect here. So let's go for that security point asset there. And then we'll grab our American road as we come back out. So getting the scale right in a build like this is going to be quite important, I think. I really want to sort of snap to the angle here as we come out. Let's go for... That should be straight. So let's keep this going through the facility. And then once we arrive at kind of the main sort of complex, so let's go for here, for example. Let's go ahead and take this 2-lane country road. And then I really want to just start forming the complex off the back of this sort of spine here. So let's treat this as kind of the main entrance. Okay, we'll have another T-junction that comes up this way. And then really here, it's all about kind of piecing together larger assets now that we know will kind of help us meet the vibe. So there's a few picked out, and again, a big shout out to our Discord community for hanging out in a voice chat and helping me piece together some assets that would be appropriate for a build like this. But definitely feeling a little bit of large warehouse, okay? We're after very kind of big, grey, chunky buildings today is very much the vibe. We're also going to come in to find it, and we're going to hit this button up here for a show extra filters panel, and then we're going to come down to sub buildings, okay? So this sort of filter in find it is new as of the plazas and promenades update, and it gives you all the sub buildings that are tethered to sort of whole buildings, so you can grab a little bit of the cargo airport if you wanted to. There's also different ones, a little bit of the rotary kiln plant. It just kind of breaks it down so you can create some really interesting sort of shapes and things off the back of this. So there is one thing I'm looking for, and this is going to actually be placing in the electronics factory as part of the build as well. It's quite appropriate towards the theme, I think. So let's see where we want this in. Definitely this way, but again we just want to factor in our orientation, so let's go ahead and throw this on that angle there perhaps, so they're driving past this big sort of solid wall as they come into the facility. And then using those sub-buildings in Find It, you can find different pieces of the electronics factory. So if we were to search for electronics factory, here we go. So you can kind of break it down into all different segments, and then you can expand the sort of shape and size of the electronics factory by dropping in its sub-buildings. They will just kind of function as dummy buildings. They don't function as the factory if you're dropping in the sub-building, but massively helpful for just bringing in sort of expanded vibes like this. Really cool trick using stuff like that. Okay, so we can definitely do that alongside the electronics factory if we want. And of course we'll drop in some more warehouses so this factory actually stays fed with its resources, because it is going to be a little bit empty at the minute, which is fine. What does it want? Plastic, glass and metal. Okay. Let's get it to store glass here then, and then we'll figure out a place for some other warehouses later on. So now, using the shape of the assets, I really just want this kind of central sort of road network to expand off of the back of this if we can. And I'd like the runway sort of somewhere down here. Now again, we are going to use some sub-buildings to help construct the sort of airport terminal, if you like. We're not going to actually use a real-life airport or actual airport area, because there's already way too many airports in Ilos, and the skies are already insanely busy. we just don't need another airport at this point. So that's fine, but we can break down the cargo airport hub in its sub-buildings using Find It, and I want to use this as an arrivals point for the airport. So let's knock it onto an angle like that. Then let's see, I just need to decide where we want the runway to go. Just thinking if we can perhaps bring in an angle off of this road. Now let's bring this road down. Yeah, we want about 45 degrees, so you need to come out a little bit further than that ideally. And then if we could bring this down on that 45-degree angle, there we go, that's perfect. And then let's introduce this cargo airport here. So again, it's not functioning, it's just a dummy building, it's essentially a giant prop. But it gives me the vibe that I need as some sort of acceptance point for all the planes that are going to come in here. And then we are just going to paint out a regular airport area. So I can drop in a runway, because I will be using an actual runway, even though of course it's not functional. It's purely aesthetic. I guess this would count as an industrial build if you were looking for it to satisfy some sort of demand in the city. We can drop in some industrial actual buildings as well today, because we do have a tiny amount of demand. Okay, so now we've got that in, let's go ahead and drag our runway out. So again, it has to be kind of configured against these road guidelines, isn't it? Over here, so imagine if there's kind of larger military aircraft landing here, and they would need a pretty significant size runway. So if I can, I'm going to try and get 150 units in. There we go. Okay, and then even though again it's non-functional, I am still going to hook in kind of the taxiway configuration for it. Let's just see if we can grab this with move it. Yeah, I do just want to bring it up a little bit and then to rotate it so it's sort of parallel with the facility. About there, I think. And then let's go ahead and grab the taxiways, bring these down, and into the airport, of course. Alright, and then a little bits of service painted here now, and plenty of prop detailing from the time-lapse, of course, should just help link all these little facilities together. Something that looks a little bit like that, hopefully. Cool, so we now have an actual place for all the planes that come into the Boneyard to actually land here, right? So it's an aesthetic at the minute. This build's going to take a long time to come together today, everyone. So do bear with me. Okay, so there's another one here. It's the disaster response building that I want. So again, using sub-buildings, we can grab different parts of different assets and whatnot. And the back end of the disaster response unit is actually really cool. Just a big grey warehouse with some props outside of it. It's very appropriate, and we're going to use a couple of these here today as well, I think. So I think now within this space I'd like a larger car park, so let's grab one of our super big boys, the 58 meter poorly maintained. And then let's do 10 and then 8, or should we go for 20? Yeah, I think we'll do 20 and 8, and then we use node controller. And then we just want to bend this one into a bend, and then close its offset so we get that sharp angle on the corner. Cool, and then we'll drop in some car parking here later. But it gives us another little road network to base some assets around now. Right, so let's throw down this one. This is going to be the back side of the natural disaster response unit. Again, totally functionless in terms of placing this building down. It is essentially a giant prop, but it's one that I love. I think we're going to double it up, right? Let's go ahead and spin this around on its axis, and then if we can almost just fuse these together so we just get a larger little warehouse. You imagine perhaps some of the stripped engine parts might become unstored here. Not sure, but we can come up with a aesthetic together, can't we? Okay, I don't think that one's too bad there. You could even bob off. I have bobbed this before. There is trees littered all over this, but you could take off this chain link fencing too if you wanted to. Okay, that's what I'm looking for, right? That big sort of grey building. It's quite hard to achieve, but with a little bit of fusing and some move it, we should be alright. Okay. Tremendous, but this kind of central facility is starting to piece itself together now, isn't it? Really is. Cool, so there's also lots of airplane hangars here in real life, so we can just use the airport ones for this, I imagine. I'm going to let this road run parallel, and don't worry, I will come through with network multi-tool as well and remove a lot of these nodes, just because they're not needed and it's not functioning. Airport area required, that's absolutely fine. Let's go ahead and just drag that airport area over. And then we want, yeah, some hangars in here, ideally. It'd be good if we could position these so they're somewhat sensible. And then how well is surface painter going to blend here now with the hangar? Yeah, that's not too bad, I don't think, is it? Can definitely get away with that. Lots of surface painter in these spaces, and there is a lot of concrete and then immediately surrounded by a lot of sand, so definitely vibes we can take inspiration from in terms of Tucson. And maybe something out here as well. Looks like quite a natural extension. Okay, cool. So hangars will also be welcome in this sort of area. Unique buildings also. There is some very nice sort of tasteful aesthetic choices within the high-tech content creator pack. Things like semiconductor plant, car factories. We can have maybe a few of these in. Let's see. So we know that we've got quite a lot of props lined up. So why don't we sort of use this building here, and then around the edge of it we can do quite a lot of prop detailing from the detail and time-lapse. Imagine a lot of today's prop detailing is going to come from crates and stuff, again, like we saw on Google Earth, those huge rows of them. Kind of things along sort of like this sort of line, you know, like several rows of these little props and lots of containers and boxes and bits of plane, basically, is what the vibe we're trying to generate. I can get on board with this as sort of a general shape and spine of the facility today. A road maintenance depot would also work tremendously well in here, but it does give us that kind of central industrial facility, doesn't it, where everything's processed and all the admin is handled for the Boneyard. Alright. Cool. So let's go ahead now and talk about the sort of meat and potatoes of this build, which is the actual sort of Boneyard itself. So let's come on to the Boneyard. We're going to bring out some more of these country road frames, and then we're very much going to switch to dirt road for sort of the rest of the configuration. So we'll sort of have a look at this space here, and then during our detail and time-lapse we can expand the idea basically to surround this entire central facility. So again, we saw in Tucson that these sort of planes, they come right down up towards where the pedestrians actually walk, but there is a little bit of breathing room there. So let's bring down this road here, and then there's just like a little curve. But I'd actually like to drop in some of the props first just to see how big they are. So I'll leave a link down to this collection on the workshop. It is just an airplane Boneyard sort of collection of dead planes, if you like. So just looking at how they're configured against the road, they're kind of like been driven down here clearly and then just parked up. And then they just kind of alternate with each other in a very obvious alternating pattern, I guess, right? There's not too much of a better way to describe it. is literally just this, isn't it? That's how it was. That's what we saw. It's, they're really fascinating places. These, I'm assuming in the UK we must have an airplane boneyard somewhere, but nothing to the scale of what we see in Tucson. It's pretty crazy. So we're going to have a few of these in. Right, just sort of spin them around together. And there we go. So these are props, so when we zoom out, they will disappear. There is a mod called Adaptive Prop Visibility that will stop this from happening and keep all props visible across the entire city at all times. As you can imagine, that mod absolutely murders your frame rate, so we are going to have to play without it. And this area will look a little bit weird when we're zoomed out from it, but we're just going to have to bear with it. It's just a symptom of today's build, I think. Alright, so once we've got one of these rows in, I then want to do maybe a little sort of 3 curve here. And then we're going to bring it down from this side as well. That's going to be good for me. Let's bring it up to there. Let's go ahead and do that same 3 curve. Bring it up to that one, and then we can box it in. And then we're just left with these patterns of sort of mass airplane boneyard here, okay? This repeats in several different styles. What we can do is come in with just our prop selection on the marquee tool with move it. We're going to give them a copy and paste. We can alternate them around even though it is the same asset, so it's not massively important, but then we can sort of help line them up with each other perhaps, maybe to about there. And then in some places in Tucson there is sort of gaps within the field. There is just empty space where perhaps something's been taken out before. So we can do that again as well. Let's bring this one back down on 70. And again, I will remove most of the nodes from these roads because they're only props. People aren't going to come and drive down here. So there's not really a need for it. And again, another 3 curve and you get the point here, right? The pattern can repeat as many times as we like now. Cool. So what we are met with as we come into Tucson is sort of a little bit of a ditch almost between the road and the boneyard. So I want to see if we can replicate that. Let's come in with a little bit of shift terrain. There we go. And I just want a smaller brush size than that. Yeah, I just want to dig out like a little ditch here. Nothing too serious, nothing major deep. Probably something you won't even really notice that much. Okay, and then let's just round it off there so it's all somewhat the same shape and size if we can help it. Turn that brush strength up as well. There we go. And then same again on this side. Yeah, so it's just like a super overgrown, deserty little ditch between the road and the boneyard. So I'm happy to introduce that. Let's go ahead and grab a little bit of chain link fencing now and we can start to piece together a little bit of a spy sample for the episode. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw in a little bit linear fence fill and some prop line tool anarchy is always handy, isn't it? Then let's just go for... Actually, no. No, everyone. We're going to use intersection marking tool. We're going to draw in a little road and we're going to change this to a decorative network because I've just remembered as I'm recording this episode that the airport fence exists and we can use network multi-tool or intersection marking tool to do it now. So let's go ahead and put it on the road and then we're going to hit apply to whole street. Yes please. And there we go. Alright. So there's our first impression. I will actually go ahead and grab a little bit of forest brush as well. And then with this Ilos dry belt I'm going to bring it down so it's about the same size. And I also want to do a big run, big smooth run with that dry Ilos belt there to bring in those drier desert grasses. And then that should give us a little bit of a spice sample of what we're expecting to see from today's build, okay? Sort of fencing larger industrial processing units over there. And then of course this mass airplane graveyard that sits. Yeah, the wheels do sort of pop a little bit, don't they? It's slightly annoying that. But I'm just going to have to deal with it. I can't play with adaptive prop visibility. It kills ASUS frames. It's just not possible. Okay, but otherwise, it's an impression, isn't it? Cores definitely needs lots of work yet. It's nowhere near finished. I think once we do have the props in, again, just a little gentle click of your sort of dry belt palette for your episode, your overgrown belt, if you like. Just in and around all of the planes will just help bring it to life a little bit more, I hope. Okay, so you get the general idea here. Fantastic. So let's have a look at some jets as well, because we do have some jet props. If indeed we can find them, we should have them from... Actually, having just realised, we can possibly use These have props on them. I think they do, don't they? Yes, they do. And they have lights. And they're concrete as well. To what extent can we bob these aircraft stands? We can remove all the floor lights and the crate pile. Okay, this actually might be worth chasing, because we can use the surface painter to actually clip the surface away. Which gives us more plane props, doesn't it? Okay, that's a mini discovery mid-episode. I'm happy to do that. Let's bob this asset then. I'm happy for the crate piles to stay. It's really the lights I don't want here. Let's get rid of the lights. Okay, and then we can perhaps use some of these planes now, which is going to expand our plane model. They're not quite as broken down as the other ones, but you know, perhaps that's part of their deal in terms of the fact that, you know, they haven't been stripped down yet. Maybe they've like just landed in the last week. And then again, using the clip function from Surface Painter, we can just remove all of this. Okay, let's not do it there though. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, we can have actually more plane props in there. Okay, cool. We can definitely do that as well. But it's not what I wanted to do. The ones that I wanted to do were here. And thankfully we already have them in nice arranged patterns. So let's go ahead and grab a bunch of props from our Area 51 build. And then we're going to drag them over to the Boneyard. And again, we can just kind of see that they're configured in and around all of these larger planes. So let's place them down. You know, perhaps they've been retired from the fight with the aliens. So maybe we can have some of these sort of jets here. And again, glancing back to Google Earth, it does look like there is some sort of like hangar space or facility. Oh no. No. I just destroyed my ditch. You idiot egg. Okay, I'll have to remember not to do the airport area there. But yes, there is like another little hangar facility in this little space here. So I think we might stick with the smaller ones. And then maybe we can do sort of two of these side by side like that. And again, a little bit of clipping function, I think, with Surface Painter just to remove any concrete from the actual Boneyard itself. Because it is very, very sandy. We can get things like that in. And then they should actually illuminate at night, right? Because they have the lights on them. Yes, they do. So that will give us a little bit of illumination within the actual sort of Boneyard itself, which I think will be quite appreciated. Outside of the main sort of processing facility. So whilst we are over here, I'd also like to start rounding out some networks that are down this part of the map. There's still a significant amount of space to fill out here as well. I haven't really kind of decided what's going to sit near the ore refinery here. So please get us some ideas for suggestions for builds in this particular area. We're by the solar plant here. And then some farmland. It's rather industrial vibes, as you can see, with the rail yard and whatnot. So yeah, get some suggestions for ideas for builds over here in the comments below. Okay, so yes, with this road here, we're going to bring it all the way down toward the river. We will delete a rock. I'm so sorry, Karina. It will come back eventually, I hope. And then let's cross the river, and then we'll come back down to Earth. This can meet with here. We can see this one's going to expand, although this might as well actually become the high-speed country lane now. Kind of a Monument Valley vibe here, right? We want very sort of long, deserty, straight country roads. Is the vibe that I'm trying to achieve. Give it a bit of forest brush too, of course, and then there is also another road coming out here, so we might as well use that as a meeting point. Just come straight down there. Are you not on a straight angle? You're not straight to that. That's fine though. You can barely tell that in the grand scheme of things. This can hook into there. This road now might as well be upgraded into that one. And that's tremendous. That should expand our network functionality a little bit there. I'm going to tie everyone together a little bit more, hopefully. I was wondering where this one could possibly go. So actually maybe another little country road through the desert here might be nice, parallel to the highway. And then we can hook it in here next to all this highway art. I realised we use nodes for this. That's why there's so many nodes just to make these little sun. And of course the classic highway turtle, which you've not seen for a long time. I do like highway turtle. We should definitely do some more highway turtle actually. Anyway, that's enough time saying highway turtle. Let's go with these country roads again. So again, just super straight narrow boys right through the desert, and then we're going to come into a little elevation here. Let's actually go a little bit further down, and then we'll do elevated. With the road tools. Force over there. That's wonderful. Come back down to Earth. And then, yeah, I really just want to sort of let you meander and meet up against the edge of the Boneyard, where again, lots of that airport fencing will be most welcome in sort of generating the vibe that we're after. Yeah, and then we'll just have it run the river. This is great. Interested just to see how many people sort of use these roads here. Then we'll have a little bit of a bend in here as we come down. A bit of forest brushing as well. And I guess we could also have the country road sort of extend alongside the river here. It's going to give us some nice sort of cinematic opportunities as we come in to detail this later on. Yeah, and then just connect it like that. Yeah, so this should make everyone a lot more interconnected over this side. Might take a little bit of pressure off of the highways. But I guess we'll see if anyone just decides to use it. Do get some people coming down this road to access Area 51, so it's not like it's totally quiet. You gonna take the country road here? No, you're going down that way. Which is fine. Love my power lines as well. I've just realised one power line is really sunken into the lake there, though. We need to change that, which we will do. Okay, but nice to see some country networks developing now. Fairly happy with this, I think. Yeah, you can see the problem with this build, can't you, from far away? It looks like it's half empty. But when you get super close, that's sort of all the props come back in. Yeah, we'll just have to grin and bear it, I'm afraid. So what we do also see knocking around in Tucson is these little kind of service, almost look like scrap yards that are in the middle of the boneyards themselves. So I think we can quite easily sort of replicate this vibe as we continue to bring out lots of these dirt road frames to hold the actual dead airplanes themselves. Is to come in with some of Avanya's recycling assets that we've used before. For this build over here. Was it this one? Yes, it was this when we pieced all this together, wasn't it? So sort of a little configuration like this, right? Just a little bit of garbage processing for the city. Not that the city needs any garbage processing, because it's absolutely vast. This stuff from Avanya's. But if you are playing with the same assets, then indeed you can use them for sort of a purpose like this as well. So there's one of them, yes, this ferrous metals MF here. So you imagine we could perhaps place sort of 2 of these. And they definitely have that sort of scrap metal vibe, don't they? Just because they've got all these props on them and all the scrap metal, of course. Yeah, so where we have these like super dismantled planes, you know, perhaps we could arrange a few rows of these to sort of sit in and around this scrap metal sort of processing unit. So the planes that are here are being processed as they come in. I think we can use some garbage processing, which of course will come and collect garbage this side of the city for us. But it will also kind of function in as part of this kind of build, right? I think we can generally get away with it. And then there's plenty of scrapyard detailing to be had here. We can essentially just drop in a bunch of these wings. There's flaps, wing 2, wing 3, etc. There's tail ends and stuff. So we can really piece sort of these little areas together just by putting all these props in a row. But again, just sort of coming back to that general sort of scrapyard service vibe almost, is why don't we have another little road that comes down this way. And then we can perhaps come in to find it. I do have a little bit of generic industry demand, so I'm going to use that as an opportunity to get some sort of generic industry into Ilos. It looks like maybe a couple of these little assets here maybe might go nicely in. We sort of fuse these together to create a larger warehouse. Not worried about losing those props on the side, that's going to be okay. No trespassing signs are appropriate too, I think. I'm on board with those. And again, there's a variety of things that will work really for this sort of general space. We can sort of wrap up some of these here, and then once we've got them in, we can start piecing together perhaps a little row of plane wings here. Maybe we can have do them out this way. Let's go for few rows, and then we can grab those props with move it. We can copy and paste them up, bring them in here, maybe have a few rows of these plain wings that have been processed. Again, maybe there's some plain flaps further out here. Go ahead and grab those. You can barely see them, but they'll do us a job anyway. Let's come back into move it and then rotate them. See if we can have them sort of aligned here. and just piece them together with patterns and move it. So thankfully, just the way they've laid out the Boneyard in Tucson, it's very symmetric. You imagine it's there just for organizational purposes, but it kind of lends itself very well for prop line tool stuff like this to be working. But you get the general idea, right? We can just have these little sort of points of service throughout the Boneyard that are here to help process all the dead aircraft, to tear them down and break them down, maybe recycle some of them as well, and then distribute them back out, either for reproduction or sort of, you know, just repurposing the materials. Recycling is the word I'm looking for, basically. I think. Right, but you get the idea with how the space will slowly develop, hopefully. But otherwise, guys, that does feel like a good point for a detailing time-lapse. Really weird build today, first time I've ever tried piecing something like this together. But what we want to do is reintroduce my ditch where I accidentally terraformed it, using the airport tool, and then bring in lots more of these patterns using the props that we've got off of the workshop. Again, this collection is linked down below. If you want to come and build your own Boneyard, I'll leave it down there. You can come and play with all these assets. But yeah, lots more of these patterns, just looking back again at the Air Force Base in Tucson to see exactly how they're all configured. And then get this airport fence wrapped around the entire facility using intersection marking tool. We can do it this here. Yes, there we go. Someone's using the country road. I'm actually interested to see where you're going. Okay, you're just driving home. Where do you work? Club de la Creme. Well, he works in the Roy Keane Mall. And he's driving home. There's a long, long way for him to drive. He's right the other side of the city. But at least they're getting used, right? This is what I want on the country roads. There we go, yeah, there's another truck over there as well. Tractor, fantastic. Awesome. Yes, but lots more Boneyard patterns around here. Anyway, getting massively distracted by cars. Yeah, lots more Boneyard patterns, lots more fencing. Come in with lots and lots of prop line tool work with the props here just to get those super repeated sort of crates and pallets that we saw in the Boneyard in Tucson. Lots more surface painter refinements, and then just tie in any kind of dead networks that are knocking about like this, and then just generally get the place functioning and busy and detailed and decorated. Otherwise, let's decorate the Ilos Boneyard, and then we'll be right back. guys, let's have a detailing review, shall we? So this has turned into a really heavy prop build, so we kind of have to look at it from the ground, because if we come to the bird's eye view, then it becomes a bit of a wet lettuce, so we will dive in from the street view for most of the review. So in and around the security checkpoint, we bobbed off the flags for the Ilos ones, which was really cool. Huge fan of these. They look really great. I need to remember to put them in the city a little bit more often. But we can see the mass repeated sort of plain graveyard pattern coming in now, right? It's super distinctive. There's a couple of different patterns and themes going on within them, so we'll head up and check that out. But as we arrive to the main facility, which we'll check out first, we see these mass repeated lines of endless props, which you imagine is salvage from the dismantling of the planes, and then also took inspiration from some little kind of tent shed vibes that we found in the airbase in Tucson, where we come into more repeated prop patterns. Into the car parking with some cracked decals and some trucks in and around our major sort of fused sort of the natural disaster response unit building. I don't really know what to call it, a big warehouse I suppose, isn't it? Of course, with lots of our old faithful industrial detailing, container props, trucks, etc. Things that we've come to know and love. And then the same thing over here as well, just lots of fencing and a little cut through road underneath the fabrication plant. Just as a little kind of separate yard away, and cut away a little bit of surface painted to allow some green space back into this area. And then some spawn point industrial stuff going on over here with some props and whatnot. So it all comes together quite nicely, I think. And then along the runway we have also combined 5 hangars together, again just taking inspiration from the shapes that we see in real life, and this was a little bit more accurate, having it sort of long and very condensed sort of side by side like this. And then we arrive into the Boneyards, which look really, really cool. Super happy with how all this came out. This view here in particular, from the corner with the guard tower. Where is it? Is it over here? It was this one, I think, wasn't it? Yes, this view here, where we have the prison on one side of the highway, and then it cuts over now into the Boneyard on the other side. Just such a cool aesthetic to have in the city. Really fun sort of way to use these props. Just super unique build to try and piece together. And then furthermore, scattered throughout the Boneyard in several places, we have these little kind of administration points, if you like, where, you know, they need these sorts of larger bits of machinery like the cranes to lift bits of fuselage, etc. And, you know, to dismantle these planes, they need this sort of equipment. So there was just like a little outpost here, if you like, rather than them having to head all the way back to the main base. They can just sort of, you know, set up a little outpost here. And then we dropped in some of the biogas sort of fuel processing things that we used. These are actually garbage processing from Avanya, I believe. Yeah, use some of these over here. These are really nice. So again, inspiration and shapes taken from Google Earth. Could also use the oil refinery assets for a similar vibe. And then lots of repeated jet patterns where we come into some prop detailing with the wings and different bits of plane that have been dismantled. And then also kind of stained the ground with a little bit of ore resource. Almost as though like the planes have kind of like rusted. It's sort of dripped into the ground and almost tainted it a little bit. It's just kind of a little bit more dirty, if you like, is the general vibe we're going for there. And this theme repeats as we come into some more industrial detailing within the Boneyard itself with more dismantled planes. And then we come into the sort of metal processing centre with some fuel tanks. And just lots of dismantled plane vibes, again with more of that prop detailing in and around here, with some more repeated prop lines that we saw in Google Earth. And then over here we've also got a little kind of boat lift, which is actually for a boat, but I think it can be used here, right, on sort of the back of this little warehouse fusing here, where we've got this little sort of outpost again. I think we can get away with it, so I'm going to include it. And then again, this all just sits like really super coolly against this main road. Just, yeah, truly fantastic. really happy with the vibe that it adds into this side of the city. And yeah, it just sits really nicely. Yeah, so we can turn on adaptive prop visibility, which I will try to do for the cinematics, but we won't be able to keep it on permanently just due to the fact that it murders the frames. But yeah, just really love the way that this part of Ilos has developed, from the Boneyard to the sort of oil refinery. We've got the major train yard over there with the industrial steel plant. It's just yeah, really fun way of sort of building a city like this, and yeah, this huge industrial side of it has just been rounded off with this long-awaited sort of Boneyard build that just really came out quite nicely, especially for a first attempt. We've definitely never tried this before. You certainly need the props to pull something like this off. You could do it with the airport stuff. Just these assets here, the ones that don't disappear, these are the airport DLC props. They don't disappear because they're technically buildings in the game, whereas these are all props. So you could do that if you wanted to. Be a little bit more blunt, I think, but you could certainly pull off the vibe. But there we go. Anyway, Ilos' Boneyard. Everyone. But otherwise, guys, that is going to do it for today. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. If you've enjoyed, likes, comments, and shares below really do help me out. Equally as much if you haven't enjoyed it, leave me a dislike as well. Super unique type of build, this one. If you're on the PC, please go and grab the collection and see what you can put together with these things. Really interesting just to take inspiration from Google Earth and try and convert it into Cities Skylines. And of course, it blends so nicely with our Phoenix-inspired city as well. Please do hang around for the cinematics, of course, big industrial ones coming up, but otherwise I will shut up and I will leave it there. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, enjoy the rest of your day.